Welcome to Bible study. We're looking at the study today that is preparing people for the mission statement writing event we're going to be hosting on the 24th of July. And today we want to look at Matthew chapter 18. We're actually going to do two studies on this, so this is the first half of that. You may want this one before you click on the other one. Open your Bible to Matthew 18 and follow along with me a little bit here. We want to ask ourselves as we read this, what is Christ saying to us about the ministry and the focus of St. Michael's Lutheran Church? So we start in Matthew 18, verse 1. At that time, disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" That sounds a little like an odd question to us a little bit, but in the first century Roman Empire, that was actually a really important question. Because the Roman Empire was really built as sort of a hierarchical, almost a caste system of society. And the object of everybody in that society was to climb the ladder. And so you needed to know who was at the top so you could either enjoy their patronage, their favor, or you might aspire to be one of them. The entire society was organized in these sort of building blocks up to the people at the top. And of course, at the very top was the emperor. And everybody knew that the emperor of heaven would be God. But who were going to be of the senatorial rank, of the equites or the equestrian rank in the Roman society? In a Roman city, these would be the people who controlled a great deal of the commerce and the economics of that place, and that in turn got them political power as well. And so when they ask this question, they're really mapping their world onto the kingdom of heaven. Jesus rejects the mapping altogether. He rejects everything that they're aspiring for, and he turns it upside down and inside out. Jesus called a child, whom he put among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now here we got another issue culturally we have to get over in order to hear what this passage is saying. Because we tend to hear the word child, and we have been trained by our culture to understand that to be innocence, that Jesus is holding up a child and holding up his or her innocence as what makes them qualified to see the kingdom of heaven. But the ancients did not see children as innocent, and in fact, if you have children of your own, you probably know this as well. They're not. In that very power-based and hierarchical society, children were rather at the bottom of the whole social structure. They were considered powerless. And in the Roman world, that meant you weren't worth much. We are right now in the midst of a giant upheaval that is happening in terms of the abortion debate. What might surprise you to know is that when Christianity stepped onto the scene, it was perfectly legal for a parent to abandon a newborn infant if they perceived of one that was somehow deformed, or if they simply were too poor to be able to feed this child, or if the slave master simply had too many slaves right now and didn't want another child, which was probably going to occupy that mother for some time, reducing her ability to work for him. He might simply have the child left beside the road, exposed to the elements, or simply murdered. And so children were somewhat expendable. This was compounded by the fact that in the ancient world, children oftentimes were subject to these childhood diseases that we have largely eliminated. And people sometimes didn't grow too attached to them because they realized they were going to lose them, or at least some of them. Now, we also have evidence from Roman cemetery tombstones, things, these beautiful poems that people wrote or had commissioned and written in stone to commemorate dead children. So it's not that Romans didn't love their children, they did, but that in the social hierarchy, a child had almost no rights. They were considered expendable. And Jesus says, you have to become like that. You have to become a helpless child, unable, impotent, incapable. You need somebody to dress you and to feed you and to take care of you. That's the kind of helplessness that qualifies you for the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble, lowered, like this child, is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. What Jesus has just done is turn the Roman world, and to a large extent our own world, on its head. Because our world also, oftentimes, for all of its words about equality and the value of every human being, oftentimes doesn't act that way, and it is might makes right. And Jesus says, not in the kingdom of heaven. The great ones are the little ones. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If you give a cup of cold water to a little child, Jesus says elsewhere, you've given it to me. He drinks it. Right? He's the one who is receiving that gift. And so Jesus is really saying something here. And Matthew's whole gospel is oftentimes called the church book for the gospels. It's the one really about the church. He's saying something to us about our mission. And what he's really doing is laying a value statement down for the church and for God. And it is that the vulnerable, the small, the little, the weak and the helpless, these are the ones who are important to God. It's not that high and mighty people are unloved. Jesus never says that. In fact, he has good friends who are wealthy and have access and political power and things like that. But he says the kingdom of heaven does not say that that person is more valuable than the peasant or the farm, the guy who is subsistence farming somewhere, or the slave or the child. All of those people have value in the kingdom of heaven. And in fact, if you look at the behavior of the kingdom of heaven, you will see that they honor the powerless more than they do the powerful. Again, inverting the social structures. He then goes on to say just how important they are. If anyone would put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were fastened around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. In the ancient world, not to have a tomb where your children and your descendants would come and remember you and honor you was a great evil. When you have a millstone thrown around your neck and you're thrown into the sea, no one can come and lay flowers on your grave. And for people of this time, that was a big deal. Woe to the world because of these stumbling blocks. Occasions for stumbling are bound to come. It's going to happen. People will stumble. But woe to the one by whom it comes. God is watching, and he will have his justice. If your hand or foot were to cause you to stumble, cut it off, throw it away. It's better for you to enter life maimed or lame than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and to be thrown into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out, throw it away. It's better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the fires of hell. Now, Jesus is not recommending we cut off hands, feet, or pluck out eyes here. What he's really saying is this is how important it is. Rather than causing this offense to happen, rather than causing someone to sin, listen, you would cut off your hand to go to heaven. You'd cut off a foot to go to heaven. But of course, your hand and your feet aren't what actually causes you to sin, are they? It's your heart. That's your heart that causes you to sin. Your mind. You can't cut that off. That's going to require a different remedy. And that's what Jesus is pointing to here, a different remedy. And so we get a parable of lost sheep. Take care that you do not despise one of these little ones. We're back to talking about them, but we've never really left it. He was talking about the temptation to sin and what causes sin, even what causes your own sin. For I tell you that their heavenly angels continually see the face of my Father. These little ones have direct access to God. So what do you think? If a shepherd had 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 in the mountains and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones should be lost. Not one. So what does this mean for us? It seems to me that one of the things that this first part of Matthew really says to us as a church is that ministry needs to not necessarily conform to the standards of the world. Not necessarily seek after those things which the world seeks. But rather, ministry is looking at what God values. And here, we get a fairly clear picture of what it is that God places his value on, and that is the little people. St. Michael's, I think, should be commended because it feeds the hungry, because we have invested and partnered with Fabian School next door in collecting clothes and gift cards at Christmas, and we have opened our building to those kids who had nowhere to study during COVID, and we said, come, study here, be warm, be dry, have a place. And that was a really, really good thing to do. And it was really good in this sense because it was the church, the body of Christ, taking care of little people. So who are the little people now? Surely it will be to continue with Fabian. Surely it will be to feed the hungry, but maybe there's more. And maybe God is leading other little people into your life and our lives to corporately, to whom we need to pay attention. As we think mission, we think about God's values, not ours. And in this passage, we have a very clear picture of just who it is that God values. Think about that. Pray about that. How would St. Michael's mission be defined if we thought about it in terms of what God thinks is really, really important? I look forward to talking with you about that, and we look forward to the event on the 24th. God bless you.